What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of what's going on here on the NarikChase channel. I'm going to be trying something new. This series is going to be called Streamline Podcast, and this one is going to be me just giving my personal thoughts on certain things. And this by no means is going to be a replacement for Breaker Debates. It would still have Breaker Debates, but just in case, it also helps that if we can't have Breaker Debates, then I'll still have these podcasts to be putting up. I'm going to be working on putting these series up possibly twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday, just like we're going to be trying to do a podcast of Breaker Debates on Tuesdays as well as Thursdays. But as I said, this one mainly is going to be me, but like we're going to keep on with the Breaker Debates. And in fact, I think we got one scheduled for tonight too after this. This is the first episode, and thank you guys for watching and attending it. And in this one, I wanted to talk about the Final Fantasy battle systems, and I wanted to compare the battle systems with some of the games. Mainly, it's going to be Final Fantasy. It's mostly the traditional style, which is going to consist of Final Fantasy VII and 9. There's going to be what's going on in 10, 13, Type 0, and 15. Now, when it comes to the Final Fantasy series, each game does introduce a lot of new elements. The battle systems change from time to time, but they mainly somewhat stay the same as a strategy game. In the Final Fantasy 7 and 9, it's the traditional ones. So there's, for each character, whether it's your playable characters as well as the enemy types, there's a time bar that counts down to when they're able to have their commands input, so the character can attack or defend or use an item or something like that. In the traditional style, players can control all of their characters. They have a big roster of characters, and typically they have to make teams, so it helps with the strategic value of the combat. This is known as the active time battle. So while you're actively playing the game and you're having a battle, of course, the time limit goes down. When it does get there, you can actually get your players to do something, but this also affects the enemy types too. That is something that I did grow up liking since I played Final Fantasy VII, and it's a great combat system. In Final Fantasy X, there's what we call the conditional turn-based system, and in this one, there isn't really a time bar. What it really is that everybody has like a turn, and based on certain statistics and stuff like that, pretty much says who goes first. And in this one, which I think was really neat, instead of players having to choose certain characters from their team, they have a complete access of their team in battle. And I believe it's about 7 characters total. So even though there's 3 on the screen, the characters can be switched out at any time. So there is that. And also, since there is no time battle, the game somewhat pauses to keep trying to figure out how to say it. It basically just pauses the game until you make a turn. Now, in the previous combat system, with the timer and everything, yes, if you don't make a move, the bad guys can still hit you when their timer goes. So in this one, nobody can make a move until everybody's turn. The players all got their turns going, so to see how that would go. Which I will say, like I said, the access to all of the other characters does make the game feel really unique. It does make it feel more like a team-based combat system, where it's not, okay, I got 7 people, I have to take 3, and it does kind of take away from that strategic element in certain ways, but each one of these characters does contribute something different to the fighting, and it does work for that game. So as far as having access to all your characters, I think that was a great addition and a different change and a refreshing take on the combat system. We have Final Fantasy 13, and in Final Fantasy 13, there is it's a form of the active time battle, but it's completely overhauled and it's completely different. In this game, battle system focuses on the paradigm system, and in the paradigm system, there are 6 roles that players can assign to certain characters, and And the paradigms has three for each role that you give a character. There are like three in a set. Yes, yeah, you have three roles in each set, and you use that for basically strategy. There are six roles. There's the let me see. I got it written right here. The commando, which is the warrior and basically the offense, the physical offense. You have the Ravager, and as well as the medic. And of course, the Ravager is black magic. The medic is white magic for healing. You have the saboteur, and you have the synergist. The saboteur gives status ailments to the enemies, and the synergist gives status boosts to your allies. And then you have the sentinel, which is basically defensive magic. And you can have these like different paradigm sets, and you can switch them to where one character is completely offensive with a defensive character and a medic character. Also, you can have it to where it's two people are defensive, one person's offensive. You can have one person that's defensive, one person that does status ailments, and one person that utilizes the Ravager skill. You can have two people that use the Ravager skill as well as a medic. So there's a lot of combinations, and the game does a great job of utilizing that against the enemies. Now, in this game, unlike Final Fantasy X, as well as Final Fantasy, the original Final Fantasy games, you only can control one player, and the AI ends up taking control of the other two. But you do have somewhat of control over your characters when you utilize the paradigm system. They can have the attacks. They can attack and defend the way that you want, based on how you build the paradigm system. Also, there is I need to stop saying in this combat system too, moves have certain selections. There's this thing called an AT bar, and based on what move you have, depends on how much of that bar is used, but you can only go by how much of that bar. So if you have maybe 4 bars, if you have an attack that takes 3 bars, and then you have an attack that does 1, you got 2 attacks. But if you have one attack that takes 4 of those bars, that's the only attack you can do. So again, that it goes with strategy, and usually if it's more than like 1 or 2 bars, then it's pretty powerful attack. So it works like that. And then ATB bar does extend over the course of the game, so you do more attacks. And that's one thing that I think is actually pretty good about that one. I didn't like Final Fantasy XIII's combat system at first, but then when I got used to it, which they do have another part of it called the chain gauge, where if you hit the enemy in a certain sequence with the certain abilities based on like their weaknesses and stuff like that, you can ultimately stun them and increase the damage that you do to them. And that's another thing you end up getting used to. But once you get used to it, it's actually a pretty good system. There is for the Final Fantasy Type 0. Now, I haven't played all into the game, but I'm just getting into it. So that's just the gist of what's the gameplay. It's a real-time active battle, which I thought was pretty cool. And you can only pick 3 members at a time from this roster of probably about 14, maybe 15 characters. It's a lot of characters. Now, I do like how you can control these 3 characters. You can, of course, you control one, and then the AI takes care of the other 2. But you can alternate which one you can control them. So you can switch characters of the one you can control, which is pretty cool. And another good thing that I did like about the game was if one of those characters die, you can switch those characters out with what they call reserve. See, the 3 characters you have are active. The rest of your team is reserved. So if one of your active members dies, you can switch that member out for somebody you have in reserve. So if a battle gets pretty tough, you could potentially end up fighting with all the characters. But that's like the only way you can dig into your reserves. It also kind of makes the battles more strategic too, because certain characters are good at certain things, and you have to change it up on the type of enemies that you're going to fight, and as well as the different situations. So there's a lot to like about that, and I'm still getting used to that system. And finally, we have the Final Fantasy 15, which probably is the most active which active one is called the active cross battle system, and then this one is basically a hack and slash, somewhat similar to Crisis Core, because Final Fantasy Type Zeros was similar to Crisis Core 2. But this one is, you can run around, you can jump. There's a new system ability where you can do this warp jump or warp attack, and it's pretty cool. It's where you just pinpoint the location that you want to warp to, as well as the enemy, throw your weapon, and you would teleport to it. And that was pretty good. You can jump around, you can run around. If you're in the middle of a battle that's a little bit too hard, you can run out of the circle of range of that fight and in the battle. And you only can control the main character Noctis, but the AI controls the other 4 characters, and they can they do a lot as far as the combat. They can heal you, they can help defend you. You can actually do team-based attacks depending on your input in the game. So there's a lot to like about the Final Fantasy 15 combat system as well. But which one of these is actually the best in terms of possibly action or strategy? As far as the action, like I said, I'm used to all of them, and I think they're all pretty great. I do like 13s, especially when I done gotten so used to it. I remember when I was making a video about the Final Fantasy VII Remake, and somebody made a comment saying that they should switch the combat system from the original traditional Final Fantasy turn-based to that 13. I said I disagreed, but having gone back and played the game, I actually kind of agreed. Now, we have seen in the Final Fantasy VII Remake combat system more similar to that of Final Fantasy 15, and I'm not sure how this is going to go. Mainly because in Final Fantasy 15 you can only play with one character, whereas in Final Fantasy 7 you play with all of the characters. So is this going to be a switching between the characters? I don't know. And I think it was one scene where you could actually see them take control of another character. But that is that right there. So I'm not really sure. I do like the original turn-based. I think it is pretty cool, and it helps with strategy. Haven't never really had an issue with it. I do like the fact that in 10 you can control all of your characters. You can switch them out at any time. So if the fight does go one way, you figure you want to change up your strategy, you automatically can, because you have a different character that you can bring into. So, I think that's actually pretty cool, because at one point you can be fighting offensively, realize you get your butt kicked offensively, turn around in the same battle and introduce defensive capabilities. Or if you need to focus more on magic, you have that. So I do like, if it is like a turn-based, I think I could actually say that 10 might actually take it. But also, again, like Final Fantasy 13, because it does force you to be more strategic when it comes to your battles. And I like the presets that you can do. Okay, and one character I have as an attacker, the other one be a defense, and the other one would be a healer. Or I can have one person, the strongest person, attack, because you can switch between this. You can pick which character you want to play as. So I can decide to have this person be an attacker, and I have this person have the synergist to boost up their status ailment. Boost their stats, and then have one person have status ailments against the enemy, and then you can change them at any time during battle. So that's actually I kind of do like that, because it's very strategic. If not for anything, I probably would say that one probably is the most strategic combat system out of all the Final Fantasies that I've played so far. But like I said, I'm only focusing on these right here, these 6, which technically 5 combat systems. The only reason that I said Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy IX is because I was going to mention the summoning system, and in Final Fantasy VII, anybody can summon depending if they get the material or not, and in Final Fantasy IX, only 2 people can summon. But I just mainly going to keep it as the traditional turn-based. I do find also that in the Final Fantasy 13, the fact that your characters kind of move about the board does make it more interactive, as well as the cameras that pan around and zoom in and stuff. I think that actually is pretty good. Also, I do think Final Fantasy 15 might be the most interactive because you're actually controlling everything that's going on. You have to run, you have to dodge, you have to use the items, you can warp, you can change your weaponry, you can help your teammates up when they're down. So you can actually just interact with the levels, with the areas too. So as far as the action based, I guess you could say that 15 it does take the cake. I do like Type Zeros mostly because you do have somewhat access to all of these characters, and you have a lot of different characters. That's another thing too. Now, whether it hurt the story, I'm not sure, but as far as the combat, it makes it very diverse. All of them have different weapons. All of them have different techniques. All of them use different abilities. So there's a lot to that too, but I'm not really sure. I do like them. I think they're all great games. Again, I haven't beaten 15 yet, and I hadn't beaten Type Zero, but I don't know. I don't really know. I really like them. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of a bummer when you're playing 15. If you've played 7, 9, and 10, it's kind of a bummer because you don't have access to all of those characters in the other games. But the AI does work well enough for you to be more strategic with the one character that you do have. In that way, it does feel a little bit more limited because you can't control these other characters. But I think it works for the turn-based to control the other characters, and it's a bit harder to work on that while you're playing in this more action, this real-time action. But I still think that if you're able to control all these characters, you can actually, it should be no problem to be able to switch characters with the real-time action. So that is kind of a drawback. You can only control one character at a time in the battles. But then again, it does help a lot if the AI is, you don't have to worry about your other companions like that, about their moves and stuff. Possibly, like I said, with Final Fantasy 13, if you have somebody that's preset to heal, you don't have to worry about healing nobody. You have somebody that's preset to use the status ailments against your enemies, you don't have to worry about that. Also with Final Fantasy 15, you don't have to worry about your companions. They'll take care of themselves most of the time. When one gets down and you can't get to them, most of the time the other AI will run over there and pick them up. Or if you get down, they'll come get you too. Final Fantasy Type Zeros like that too, where you ain't got too much worry about your companions. They'll take care, and it's cool. Like if you're sitting here just hacking at this one guy, and then these two sitting there taking care of the other guys, that works out a lot. But I haven't said that. I mean, I guess it's a preference between the games, because for each game, those battle systems do work, and it's kind of hard to imagine if they actually could cross over into the next one. But having said that, I've been sitting here rambling about this, and I still hadn't come to a decision. But hopefully, one day in Breaking the Base, I can get somebody to talk to me about what they think about which one of these combat systems is the best and for what game, and if they could potentially cross over into another game. But anyways, guys, in the comment section below, let me know, what did you think about this first episode of the Streamline Podcast? And also let me know what you think about which one of these battle systems is your favorite. Now, I know I didn't go with Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, Dissidia, any of the other Final Fantasies, but I'm not talking about Crisis Core, hadn't played Dirge of Cerberus, and I'm not talking about Dissidia, even though Dissidia is pretty awesome. And most of the other Final Fantasies I haven't played yet. But anyways, tell me which one of these battle systems is your favorite. And also be sure to hit that like, share, subscribe, and that notification button to get the best of what's going on here at the NarikChase channel. And I'll catch you guys later. NarikChase is out.